All right, everybody. We got another very special guest for y'all. Everybody, please welcome to the show, Patrick Coyle.
Hey,
Welcome,
hey,
Patrick.
thanks for having me, man. It's good to meet you.
It's good to meet you too. It's always great. One of those creators who I've backed their projects in the past, and now we finally get to chat about them. So I guess we'll start. You're new here, so we got to put you through the gauntlet of your origin story. Like, what got you
Sure.
into comics, and what point were you like, I got this cool idea, I want to start creating them?
Yeah, sure. Now this one's the layup, the origin story, right? It's
Yeah.
um, so I started reading comics when I was little, spinner racks, the whole thing, picking them up, and before it was just direct market, right? So you could get comics on your corner store, and I was making my own comics when I was 8, 10, and then even in middle school, me and a couple of friends started our own comic book company, and we called Andromeda Comics, and we would go down to my dad's work, and we would photocopy the comics. We would make these 100-page anthologies on photocopy paper, and we would sell them to like family friends for $1 each. And we even got in like the local papers and that kind of stuff. It was a lot of fun. And then my friends grew out of that, and I didn't. And and so I've been a lifelong comic book reader and creator. I went to school for illustration, thinking I was going to be a comic book artist. And when I got out, I was like, I can't live this life. I can't be a freelancer. To be honest, I wasn't good enough. If in retrospect, I didn't work hard enough at it. I wasn't good enough at it. And I kind of fell into the whole web boom of the 90s, where if you knew Photoshop and you knew a little bit of HTML, you could be a web developer or a web designer. So that's kind of where life took me. But I got tired of that after about 5 years because it was a good living, but I wasn't making comics. So, I kept going to comic book stores, and every couple of years I'd try to work on something, draw something, write something. And then in 1999, I met this guy, Shannon and Eric Denton, who used to be, at the time, he was working for Warner Brothers Animation as a storyboard artist. But he had worked for Rob Liefeld at Awesome. And he had also done some issues of like Deadpool and some Marvel and DC work. And he just knew everybody, and he was self-publishing. Like, he was really good at networking, and he knew everybody. And I reached out to him when I picked up one of his books that he published through Antarctic Press back in like 1999. And I was like, hey, your website kind of needs some work. If I help you, will you help me with my comics? And he's like, sure. He's like, I'll take some free web design work, because his wife, Kristen, who I also know and friends with, he's like, she's just doing it in her spare time as a favor to me. So we started working together. We became friends, realized we have similar sensibilities, and we started one of the early online comic book publishing companies in 2000 called Comic Works, spelled with 2 Ks, KOMIKWERKS. And we did online, and we did some digest sized books. We even worked with Stan Lee for a little while. We had a subscription service before people were ready for subscription services, which is why you never heard of it. It was called Stan Lee's Sunday Comics, and every Sunday we would put out, I think we had like half a dozen professionally produced online strips that were formatted for your screen, because we didn't have smartphones yet, and manga hadn't really taken off, at least in this country as well as it has now.
Was that with Stanley's like company he did that was named like Stanley whatever
Stanley
after he
Media,
left?
I believe. Yeah,
Yeah, after he
yeah,
left Marvel.
exactly. Yeah, it
Okay.
was 2 companies after he left Marvel. Like, one went bankrupt or got sued or something, and then he started another one. Like, there was a lot of legal trouble. And I'm not going to cast aspersions on Stan here, but I just know that one of our business partners knew Stan and got it together. Of course, he had no idea what we were doing. It was his people working with us. But you know what? We met him at San Diego one year when we had a booth. He was walking by, and we just said, "Hey, Stan!" And of course, like, he turned it on. He became Stan the Man. Turned around, and he's like, "Hey, how you doing?" And we're like, "So nice to meet you. We're working with you with the online thing." And he's like, "Oh, of course." And he had no idea what was happening, but it was really great. We got some really great creators that we worked with for our anthology, our print anthologies. We worked with hundreds of people in comics and animation, including Dwayne McDuffie, Eric Canetti, Keith Giffen, Ernie Colon, just on and on and on. So it was an awesome experience. And but after about 10 years of that, I started having a family, and my wife was in medical school, and I just didn't have the bandwidth, right? So I had to put that away. And also, I had started that company with Shannon so that I could produce my own comics,
Mhm.
and I ended up running a small business instead. So I only produced like 20 pages of my own comics over 10 years. And I was like, if I do this again, this isn't really the way I want to go about it. Now, that said, Shannon is now a lifelong friend. We had a lot of great adventures. We did San Diego for 10 years straight. We had a lot of fun, met a lot of people. I wouldn't trade it. But then years later, now that my kids are older, and then in the pandemic, like a lot of people, I reevaluated my situation in life and my goals. And I said, look, I gotta do something. I gotta make this a reality. So I kind of sat down. I decided that I was going to go the Kickstarter route. I started exploring that. I talked to a few people who had already done it. I talked to Heather Antos, who's an editor at IDW, former Marvel editor, and because she does consulting. So I wanted to talk to her about it. And then about 2 months later, I was like, okay, I'm definitely going to do this. And I was like, I really don't want this to suck. So I want to hire, like, I sold off most the the most valuable parts of my comic book collection. I got 40 boxes upstairs, and I was like, well, you know what? I don't have any money to pay somebody, so I got to make it somehow. So I sold like my original Watchmen and Dark Knight Returns and anything that was hot at that point because the Marvel movies, right? I could sell off a lot of stuff that I had from the 80s and 90s and beyond. So I financed the first issue, which was where's my camera? This one. I met my artist Gonzalo Martinez through a friend of a friend. He lives in Chile, and he's a great artist, but has never really worked in American comics before. And so I met him. We did a little trial comic together. And then I was like, I think I really need an editor because I don't want my story. I hadn't written anything in like 10 years. So I was like, and I don't even know if that was any good, let alone my new stuff. So I approached Heather and I said, hey, would you be willing to do my comic? Thinking that she was too busy. And she said, yeah, okay. And so I got her on board, and we were off to the races. So we published the first one, a 72-page graphic novel in 2022. And then we started putting out this 6-issue series called Bixby Grant, Fangs and Brimstone in 2024. Late 23 and then into 24. And we're coming up on the third issue. The idea, because you asked about it, actually goes back like 25 years. I came up with it when I was in art school. I don't know if you remember the Great Lakes Avengers at all.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So you can blame Bixby Grant on John Byrne a little bit. The character of Mr. Immortal I was fascinated with. Like, he doesn't really have any powers other than he doesn't die. Right. So he falls off a roof, and then like he breaks every bone in his body, but he gets back up and they all snap back together, and then he goes about his business. So I was kind of fascinated with, like, he's not really a traditional superhero. And wouldn't that be interesting if there was only one person who could do that? And so I started thinking about that, and I love noir. I love detectives like Dashiell Hammett and Raymond Chandler and all that kind of stuff. And Chinatown was a big influence on me back when I first started watching that kind of stuff. And I also love Universal Monsters. So I kind of combined the two eventually. Like it percolated for a little while. And eventually I drew this mummy, and he was going to be an adventurer at first. But then I was like, no, it'd be more interesting, I think, if he was a detective and people brought him, cases to solve. And so it kind of sat on a shelf for a long time. And then I started to make one of those comics in the late 90s. And then I did a short one when I was in the Comic Works days. And to be honest, the stories weren't very good. I had another artist named Armand Villavert do the interiors for that short. And that was great. But so it was kind of nice that I had that long time for this idea to really, for lack of a better word, kind of coagulate, like, and really come together over time, because new pieces will come in the more I learned about the process and more about other pieces of pop culture, and kind of all pulled them in. So Yeah, a lot of different influences in it. Batman the Animated Series is in there. Hellboy is in there. The Goon is in there. The Spirit, a lot of pulp stuff, kind of all mashed together. So some of my favorite stuff.
So, story of my comics life has been I usually get into things late and then go backwards.
Okay, yeah.
So, I was introduced to the Great Lakes Avengers through Will Robson's run. I
Mm,
forget who wrote it, but I just remember that art
yeah,
and picking up those issues and be like, "This is amazing." And then going back. So that was my introduction, and then that led to me eventually like getting to talk to Will and then seeing all of his independent stuff and just falling in love with his work.
nice.
So that's a great one. I guess my audience will know pretty quickly. You hit some keywords there for me as to why I got into this book, which was Universal Monsters, detective stuff, all that.
Sure.
What kind of detective media really influenced the creation of this book for you?
Are you familiar with the hard case crime novels? They started coming out maybe 20 years ago. But I forget the name of the founder of the company, but he started getting the rights to a bunch of old pulp dime novels from the 50s and 60s, and some like forgotten masterpieces that were no longer in print. And so
Yes,
it's a wide array of crime and detective stories.
and I believe they're the ones that are relaunching or re-releasing the Parker novels, right?
Yes, I believe that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they also make comics now. They started that a few years back, which are pretty good. Dwayne Swarzynski did a comic for them, and a couple other folks who did some really good work. Stephen King wrote a book for them. But anyways, the point is like I've always loved that kind of dime store detective crime. Little bit of sex, a little bit of crime, a little bit of the underbelly kind of stuff. Now Bix isn't quite that grimy, but it's I'd say it's under the surface. So I kept the tone of the main Bixby Grant story a little lighter, like a little bit more the tone of Batman the Animated Series is I think the best gauge that I can give people, most people who are fans like us. But there's a backup story called Zombie Town, and that one's a little grimier, and it takes place underground. I think you've read it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
All right. So yeah, that one was like, okay, I want to show that there can be another side to Harbor City, which is the fictitious city that Bix lives in. And that one's a little more atmospheric and a little bit more horror-y because zombies. And it's got like a underground zombie fight club, and it's got zombie mobsters and some sewer creatures and some other fun stuff. So I mean, I've got a ton of other stuff that I haven't even touched for the world of Bixby Grant. I've introduced a couple supporting characters, Diego, the rockabilly vampire, and in Wolf She Cried, the first one, we have what's his name, Baron von Wolfenberg, which is he's a magnate. He's kind of a Austrian Tony Stark type, except for instead of being Iron Man, he's a werewolf. And then it also kind of came about where originally I was like, this is just a sprinkle of monsters in this town. But now what I've kind of ballooned it up to is that there's a whole, I don't know, 40%, 30 to 40% of the population there is monstrous in some way. Either they're a magic user or they're a monster or they're somewhere in between. So in this Fangs and Brimstone story, in fact, there is the corrupt mayor who's running for re-election. Part of his platform is to drive these people out of town because he's blaming them for ruining their way of life, quote unquote, which might sound a little familiar to some things that are going on in our world right now. But I started to use the way Claremont was using the X-Men in the 80s, and other people have since then, but that's what I came up on reading, was there's this whole, race of people who are looked at as less than or other. And you can use any minority or any oppressed, group, kind of as a stand-in for that. So that was kind of the attraction there for me.
Yeah, that was kind of the beauty of the X-Men for the longest time. It was
Yeah,
Stan Lee talking about the African Americans, but you go to today and it's, it could be the LGBT crowd or
exactly.
you name it.
Right.
When you're doing stuff that you feel is political in your story, how do you handle it? Like, do you want it to kind of hit people over the head, or do you feel like the subtle nature of it hits better?
Well, that's a complicated question. So yeah,
Yes.
I don't want to come off as preachy because
Hmm.
I feel like the best stories do kind of make you realize things without really beating you on the head.
Yeah.
So like the and also being online today and seeing how people, just bicker back and forth and really the toxic nature of it, you're not going to change anybody's mind by slapping them about the face with a different opinion. But if you can relate to them in some sort of humane, aren't we all kind of like this? Aren't don't we all have our travails and issues and problems that we need to overcome? And can't you kind of empathize with this particular person? And shouldn't they then empathize with everyone else? Rather than saying, you're wrong, this is the right way. Like it's just more interesting as a creative exercise to try and figure out how to do it that way.
Yeah, I've always felt in storytelling. I mean, there's a time and place for beat you over the head
Of course. Of course.
storytelling,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but I think in probably like 80% of those types of books is just lazy writing, and that's what people are reacting to too much.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
they see that and they're like, oh, they're beating me over the head, and I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't want politics in my comics. No, you do. You just want it to be done well.
That's right. That's right.
Like the best story. I mean, dude, Watchmen, one of the best stories of all time. That was
Yep.
a deeply political book. Everybody.
It's all politics.
So yeah, it's just interesting to hear how different people want to take it, because you get stuff like the X-Men, which was once again a deeply political book, but
Mhm.
people love it and revere it for what it was, and that's because Claremont back in the day just did such an amazing job of telling that story without beating you over the head with it, really
That's right.
making you fall in love with these characters, and then being like, huh, there it is.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
When Nightcrawler is like, "Oh, I'm such an outcast, and I feel bad about," and he doesn't say what kind of outcast he is. So
Yeah.
everybody can relate to feeling left out or less than or not part of or a little bit looked down upon. So
Yeah.
it leaves it open to interpretation, which is smart and great.
And however many decades later, people still pick up that book and connect with it, even though
Yeah.
what Claremont was talking about back then is not what's happening today,
Exactly.
for the most part.
Yeah.
No, one of the things I loved about when I picked up the series was that you took the different Universal monsters and just overall like horror icons,
Yeah.
and turned them into like caricatures. You brought the
Yeah.
rockabilly vampire and stuff like that.
Yeah.
How how much fun did you have just like building that, like the idea of a rockabilly vampire, or the Iron Man prestige for a werewolf and all stuff like that?
It was a lot of fun, and it was
Yeah.
another reason why taking so long to get to make this book was actually helpful, is because those things didn't happen out of the gate. When I first came up with the idea for Bix, I knew I was going to have each of the Universal monsters in some form, but they were all much more straightforward. I was like, oh, he lives in a town that has an amphibian man, or creature from the Black Lagoon, or there's a vampire that he has to fight, or and I was like, well, but it's much more interesting if you have you take some. I love a mashup, right? I think everybody loves. If you're a fan of pulp, of comics, of pop culture in general, mashups are what it's all about, right? So remixing things that we all know and love is just so much fun. So Diego was originally called Dizzy, and he was going to be a jazz musician, because I was going to 20 years ago. Bixby Beck is a jazz musician, and then I was going to have Dizzy as like Dizzy Gillespie. And I was going to name all the characters after jazz characters or jazz musicians. And I was like, I don't love that idea anymore. Like I grew out of that idea, but I still really like the name Bixby Grant. And then I also just looked at my cast, and I was like, everybody's really white, and I think that inclusion and representation is important. So I changed Dizzy to be Diego, and he's from Mexico originally, and Baron von Baron von Wolfenberg is originally from Austria. His family came over; they were war profiteers, and he's trying to make up for that. And then, so having these mashups of figuring out what those mashups were going to be took a long time, but it was. It also was molded by kind of jamming in the detective novel tropes, right? So you're always, when you've got Philip Marlowe, he's always catering to rich clientele. So the rich are always assholes or weirdos or, um, but they're always like up on a hill, right? So I wanted one of the characters, or my werewolf, to be one of those people. But he's also kind of a Jekyll and Hyde. So when he turns into the werewolf, he becomes a biker. So he's kind of got this dual personality. So yeah, it was. I can't put quite a finger on how it all evolved. So much to say that like I just over time things were like, oh, that's a good idea. Maybe I'll pull that in some. And then you just make a little note in your notebook, and then when you go back to it, you're like, oh yeah, what if I took a little column A, a little column B, and kind of smushed it together. I do have a Creature from the Black Lagoon coming, but that is going to be a really big story in and of itself, and has personal implications for Bix. So I'm not going to mention who that is or what they're about. But yeah, so Diego, being the rockabilly vampire, it just seemed like, well, okay, so he's from Mexico and he's like 200 years old because he's a vampire, and maybe he arrived here in the 50s and he just fell in love with rock and roll. And because he doesn't age, he's perpetually 22, right? So he's just kind of a rock and roller, but he kind of Forrest Gumped his way around music, and he both he and Bix are kind of stuck in their original time period, even though they live in modern day. And because I wanted to be able to tell stories about outdated, beliefs and societal norms and things like that. So that's a lot of what Bix brings to the table. And what I wanted to contrast that with is Diego, who is technically older than Bix, but mentally younger because he became a vampire when he was quite young. But he's grown up around in a very different atmosphere with rock and roll and clubs and, a lot of young people with progressive ideas. So he's got a lot more kind of modern thinking around a lot of the topics that Bix grew up with. So that was a really long-winded way of answering that. I'm not sure I even addressed your original question.
No, you said at the beginning I had a lot of fun. So
Okay, good.
Going from that, your writing style, do you have like, are you the type that's driving around and you have to pull over to like write on your phone real quick that, oh man, the rockabilly vampire, I got to do this? Or how is your writing style for that?
There's a lot of that. I used to have an hour plus commute to work. I live in Central Mass and I used to commute into Boston, right? So I would sit there, and thank God for smartphones because you could use them as dictaphones. And so I would just sit there, and if something popped in my head while I was sitting in traffic, I would just, record it and then jot it down later. These days, I work from home, and most of my ideas come to me while I'm out for a walk or in the shower. It's one of those, that's processing, it's percolating in the background when you can't come up with what you want. It's, your subconscious is working on it later. But there's a lot of, like I mentioned before, like you notice something, and there's some writers who like keep a little notebook in their pocket, or I just write it. My notes app on my phone has got notes going back to 2015. And sometimes I'll just spit through it. I'm like, what the hell is this? Like, I don't know what this was supposed to mean. But sometimes you find some gold in there too. So there's, and I'm kind of all over the place. Like I've got a notebook here, and then I got stuff on my phone, and then I've got a sketchbook over there. And it's just like, it's all in here somewhere. And hopefully the best stuff, sticks with you. And I've heard from some people, and it all depends on your personality. However you like to work is how you like to work. Some people are like, I have to get it down or I'm never going to remember it. And then there are some people who are like, well, the good stuff will stick with you, and so don't worry about it. I'm kind of somewhere in between. Like I will write it down. I'm a visual learner. So if I see the words, it helps me remember it, and then things will start to percolate, and I'll kind of let it sit for a while.
So I'm a space cadet. That episode of Seinfeld where he has to wake up in the middle of the night to write down the note. That's me.
Yes. Yep.
It needs to be written down. That, or if I hear like I'm listening to a podcast when I'm driving at work.
Yeah.
They'll be, I read this book and it's blah, 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 blah. and I'll just be saying the name of the book over and over again in my head, Bixby Grant, Bixby Grant. So when I stop, I can be like, I gotta look this book up.
Yeah.
So I completely get that. So yeah, you're into issue 3 of the book. I mean, I guess, I mean, there's something I want to get to with it because there's something about your cover that makes me believe there's more to this world than just Bigsby. But
Yeah.
where do you see Fangs and Brimstone as the mini series? Is that going to go 4 or 5 issues? How long do you see this going?
It's actually going 6.
6. Okay. And
Yep. And
then,
I do have plans beyond that.
so your plans beyond that, I guess, is, I know you probably don't want to give up too much, but you do label
Yeah.
these as a Harbor City mystery. So do you
Yes.
see Harbor City in the world of Bixby Grant as a living world where you can maybe tell a story about an alien that lands there some down the line, or something
Yep.
maybe outside of the mystery genre?
Absolutely. Like I've got, back to my notes app, I've got other ideas besides Bix that I've come up with over the years. And then once I started really publishing and creating these Fangs and Brimstone books, I was like, there's no reason I couldn't take that idea and pull it into Harbor City, or that idea and pull it in. So I did purposely call it. I'm glad you caught that. It's a Harbor City mystery because I might want to tell a Diego story, or I might want to tell a Baron story, or in the backup here, it's one of the supporting characters. Maritza Ramirez is a Harbor City police detective, and so eventually I want to collect that story plus the main story here, and so they could both be Harbor City mysteries and have that connective tissue. But yeah, I've got some kind of pulpy stories. I got some sci-fi stories. I got some, I would say, more hardcore horror ideas as well, that all can fit in what's been created here so far. I always like to liken it to Superman and Batman are fantastic characters because they're so elastic, right? So for Batman, there's Detective Batman, there's Superhero Batman, there's Adventurer Batman, there's the personal side of Batman, and there's the Bat family, and there's so many different things you can do with it. You've got the swashbuckling when he's the adventurer with Ra's al Ghul, and then there's Detective where he's solving mysteries in town, and then he's a part of the Justice League. And Superman's the same way. You've got like Deep Space Superman, you've got Cosmic Superman, you've got Daily Planet Superman, and you've got Kryptonian Superman, and then you've got there's so many different ways you can go with it, and I think I can do that with Bix or with just Harbor City on a larger scale, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I see a lot of creators, especially on Kickstarter, who they have all these different stories and they want to tell them, so they're making all these different types of books.
Yeah.
For you, does it feel like you've created this world and you want to kind of stay inside of it for a while? And so while you want to tell different types of stories, you're like you said you could kind of bring some of them into Harbor City. Are you going out of your way to do that? Like to say like, oh, I got this great idea. How could I fit it into Harbor City, or how could I do it as a part of this world down the line?
To be honest, that's an ongoing debate in my head. And I don't know, I've talked to some other indie creators, folks who either have gone the traditional route and are now solely doing Kickstarter, or are just Kickstarter creators as their means of distribution. And everyone's like, you should just stay here and build your audience with the one property, which from a business standpoint makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like you build an audience based on what they like. So right now I've got hundreds of backers who really like Bixby Grant. And so your natural inclination is like, we'll give them more of that. But what if I've got another idea that I could fit into the Harbor City world, but is it a stretch? Is it, like you said, kind of really forcing it? And I don't know the answer to that. Like it would probably change in tone a little bit. So I don't, it's an ongoing debate, like I said. Yeah. So there are some ideas that I'm like, absolutely, that makes perfect sense. It slots right into here. I could see this character hanging out with Bix, or this character in Harbor City, no problem. And then, did you read Wolf She Cried, the original 72 pager?
No.
Okay, so that's the one that came out in 22. That was a standalone one, and there's a character in there named Doc Deadeye, and he's my Frankenstein's my Dr. Frankenstein. his sister is a robot, and she's my Frankenstein's monster. And so, but that was a totally separate idea years ago, where I wanted I don't remember the origin of this, but it was going to be a scientist who couldn't get funding. And so but he was a crack shot. So he started holding up banks, dressed as a cowboy as his disguise. And so I was like, well, that could work in Bix. And it actually made a lot of sense, because you always need that, the guy in the lab who's going to help you solve a mystery, right? So, and then I developed that story with his sister being the Frankenstein's monster, and then he could also help out if there's a bigger fight that he needs help with, because he's a crack shot. So yeah, that was an example of a really easy melding of concepts, and also that also helped because I didn't think, when I revisited that idea, that it was going to be able to stand on its own. Like it just didn't have enough legs. But as a supporting character here, I think it's great. So yeah, it's a case by case basis, I guess, is the long way around this one. But I do have other stories I really want to tell. So my notes app is full of stuff that's not Bixby Grant or not Harbor City related. And the question is, when do you get to it? So
I always think of a story I heard from Chip Zdarsky on his podcast, where he was like, the problem with his career was nobody knows what a Chip Zdarsky book is. Like,
yeah, I've heard that. Yeah, I heard that. Yeah.
And he goes, that's the issue, is like somebody likes, sex criminals, but then are they going to like Newburn? Because those are completely different things.
Right.
Whereas I'll just give one of my favorite examples, and that Brubaker. Like, I love Brubaker Phillips, don't get me wrong, but know what a Brubaker Phillips book is when it comes out. Like,
oh yeah, yeah.
So I think there is a back and forth there. I think for me as a fan, if it's a creator I like, I mean, I'm going to follow him or her into the next project.
Yeah, for sure.
You got to prove it to me with the next project. Don't get me wrong.
Course.
I'm not going to just blindly go, but yeah, there definitely is something to it, because when I look at the Kickstarter community in particular, I mean, the big names do tend to stick with their one thing. And I think it's unfortunate in some ways. Like there's a lot of creativity out there for different types of stories and just different worlds to be built.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is, like you said, it's very complicated, because I could go on for 20 more minutes about, but you built this giant world, but do you want to stay in this world forever? Blah, blah,
right.
blah.
Right. I mean, the dream is I'd like to keep telling Bixby Grant and Harbor City stories for the rest of my life, but also do other things on the side. Now, the limitations of time and money, give me constraints. So I gotta pick something, and Bixby Grant was always the big one that I never got to. So I wanted to do that one first. I mean, the thing about Brubaker is he already got to do, Winter Soldier and a bunch of stuff with Marvel and DC. He got to do his Batman, and he got to do a bunch of other things in other sandboxes. And now he just does Brubaker stuff, which is phenomenal. I've been a fan of his going back to the Scene of the Crime. Right. So Chip, on the other hand, like we're buddies, Chip Zdarsky, he got kind of thrust into the mainstream with Sex Criminals, and then was known more as a humor guy, because I think the first couple of things he was doing was Howard the Duck and some other shorts, right? And then all of a sudden he was writing Daredevil and doing a bunch of kind of more serious indie stuff, which I think is awesome. I love a writer who can do everything. I would like to be one of those people, but we'll have to see if the fates allow it.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody would love to be able to have a career like Chip's. I mean, beyond the success, just having people that are willing to read anything, like, it's pretty crazy. Yeah. What have you been doing outside of Bixby to kind of build your audience? You've been doing a lot of anthology work, or?
I haven't. I've been thinking about that, actually. I mean, so I do have a day job, right? And I'm also a parent. So there's only so many hours in the day, right? But I've been thinking about doing some anthology work. I've joined a lot of communities over the last couple of years, a couple of Discords, which is actually where you and I met,
Mhm.
and kind of weighing my options and figuring out where I'm going to start, maybe applying and submitting to. So I wanted to get my feet wet and understand to be honest, even though I've been doing this for almost 4 years now, I still didn't really understand a lot of the community, the full breadth of the community. So I've been getting a real taste of that now that I've been in a couple of better online communities. So I do hope to get that going. I've written the first draft of a novel, which is not really to build an audience, but was a creative exercise that I wanted to try.
Mhm.
And it's totally unrelated to this. It's actually a YA novel. Like it it has nothing to do with superpowers or anything. Um, so yeah, I've got a pitch for a couple other things, like a couple other series, and I'm weighing options of like trying to get a mainstream publisher pitch together and see what I can do with that. And like everything's on the table, but I haven't really taken action to move forward with them just yet. So it's baby steps, really.
You brought up two things there that I want to pick on a little bit.
Okay.
Community, the word community there. Going back to your origin story with
Yeah.
your original online stuff, how much has the community shifted over that time, and how much of those days are you taking into the Kickstarter days now?
Uh, well, I get a lot of support from people that I've met in those 10 years from Comic Works. I would say that the online community has exploded. Like there were, pockets. There was like, Pencil Jack. I don't know if you're familiar with that site. And then there was, what was it called? Shoot. It was LinkedIn for comics, and I can't remember what it was called. I don't even think it's around anymore. But so there were a few. There was also digital webbing, and there was a couple other places that were both communities and publishers. And we didn't embrace the community part so much as the publishing. But people that I met from that era are still very supportive, and I've gotten pinups, and I've gotten a lot of online support. People helping me kind of pimp the book, which has been great. One of the things that I love about comics is it's a really small industry, and within a 1 or 2 degrees, you can access everybody, even like uh, superstars like Mike Mignola or Kirkman, or like I know somebody who knows them. Like not like I could get them on the horn or anything, but you know what I mean. Like it's that just to demonstrate the smallness of the industry,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody, with a couple of notable exceptions, really want to help everybody else. And so people that you were kind of in the trenches with years ago are like, hey, you got a new thing? I'll help you boost that signal. Let's get that word out. And so, even people that I hadn't talked to in 5, 10 years, when I hit them up that I was putting this Kickstarter out, people are like, this is great. This is so good. What have you been up to? And then, you kind of reunite. So the community kind of sticks around. But the online community, I feel, is much stronger, at least in my opinion. And I was busy running Comic Works, so I didn't really get to engage in the social aspect of the online communities back in the day. So for me now to be on a bunch of Discords with folks and just be able to shoot the shit and then compare notes, and then but also talk about Alien Earth or or whatever else is going on, or like, hey, who's going to be at this show? Like that's it's phenomenal. I think it's evolved over time. I think there's a lot of similarities, right? Like Discord is not that different from community boards in the 90s, like GeoCities and some of these other places. But I think it's a lot better. I think it's a little more curated. I think it's a little bit more, the attitudes, particularly on a couple of the ones that I'm on, the people who run it are much more polite, and they want to have a friendly, honest community where people can not air grievances, but speak freely but respectfully. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think all those years of being on social media, like we all got sick of it, and we're like, we
Yeah.
have this even smaller community now, and let's just all be nice.
Yes.
Let's have a good
Exactly.
time.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um,
I honestly wouldn't be on social media anymore if I wasn't trying to pimp my stuff.
oh yeah, I agree there. I always think when the day I learned how small the comics community was I emailed. So doing this, I don't know if you ever hosted a podcast or did interview stuff before, but doing this,
Yep.
you have to email a bunch of people and
Sure.
just be like, "Hey, do you want to be my?" And you feel like an idiot. You want to be on my podcast? Eventually, you get over it after however many years I've been doing this.
Yeah.
But one day, I emailed Derek Robertson, who was one of my favorite artists of all time. I mean, the voice
Nice.
and transmet everybody. And
Nice.
he said, "Yes, I'll be on." And then I was talking to him, and he goes, "Nobody ever asked me to talk about comics." I was like, "What?
What did they ask you to talk about?
Like, he goes, "Yeah, nobody ever wants me on their show." And I'm like, "Dude, anytime. Like, you're a goddamn legend." Like,
Yeah. Seriously.
And then just realizing the guy that I grew up reading his stuff, and it's like he's literally within earshot of me. And we're talking Daredevil, like nerding out about Daredevil together.
Yeah.
I'm like, "You're a genius, dude. Like, what am I doing here?"
Yeah.
That's when I learned how small this industry really was.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I still have a lot of imposter syndrome whenever I approach people who are, the next rung up from me, or, like my favorites. But you do get a lot. I don't know if you get this. Like, I go to shows and I don't have a booth, but I want to go around and meet people. And like, I do variant covers and I do pinups for my, as prints as rewards as part of my Kickstarters. And I like to get, known names to try and help sell the book. So I go up to people who are professionals at the shows, and sometimes you could see this look come over their face. Where like, I make my own comics, and they're like, oh, okay. And then you show them, they're like, oh, and they're really surprised. They're like, oh, this is actually pretty good. And I was like, oh, you work with Heather, and I'm like, yes. And they're like, oh, I love Heather, and then they kind of legitimizes you, but. So I'm kind of riding her coattails, at least from a legitimacy standpoint. But my team makes me look really, really good, right? So both Gonzalo Martinez and Gonzalo Ruggieri are the artists on the main story and the backup story, respectively. And Arthur Hesley, who is a colorist who lives in Brazil, he's now working for Marvel. And I was like, oh, he's going to big time me, and he won't be able to do my book anymore. And he's like, I will always do it for you. You gave me my break. I was like, are you serious? It's like, you're doing Thunderbolts, right? He's like, yeah, but I can do your book for sure. I was like, awesome. Thank you. But I did get the opportunity when I was doing Comic Works. We did a bunch of interviews, and I don't remember how I got it, but I got John Romita Jr.'s email address. And so I just sent him an email out of the blue. And I was like, hey, big fan. Would you mind talking to me? And he's like, sure. And I was like, what? And so I was on the phone with John Romita Jr. for an hour and a half, and he just let me talk, and he was drawing the whole time. I think he's looking for a way to kill time while he's at the drawing board. is the feeling I got. But he was so nice and so willing to talk about anything. He talked about his dad. He talked about coming up in the 70s and 80s, and he talked about what he did and didn't like. And he's a superstar, right? He's one of the perennials. And he took an hour and a half to talk to me, who he doesn't know from Adam, and who has no clout and can't help him in this industry at all. So that was my day where I was like, oh yeah, this industry is pretty small.
And then the other thing you had brought up was that you did a YA novel as an exercise. Yeah. Being that detective stuff works so well in the novel form, and I'm thinking of another Kickstarter that I really enjoy, which is the Mandrill PI series. I don't know if you.
Oh yeah, I love Mandrill. Yeah.
Christopher also does novels based in that world too. Have you ever thought about that as a something to do? Yeah. Maybe to continue the brand, expand the brand, blah blah blah.
Absolutely, yes. It's been something I've been toying with actually since before I put out the first graphic novel. Mostly because I could do it all myself. I don't have to get a collaborator or pay somebody to do the work, which I'm happy to do. But like we said before, I'm not made of money, so it's definitely on the list. The question is, of course, when do I get to it? I also haven't come up with like the right idea for a novel yet. Like I think there's strengths to a novel and there are strengths to a comic, and I haven't found the quite what I want to do with a novel that I think plays to its strengths. Whereas most of my ideas traditionally have been thought of visually, and play up, what you can really do with a comic. And that's the way my brain usually works. So eventually, I will do a novel, but I gotta get the right thing for it.
Very cool. So I think a great way to get us close to a wrap up here. Bixby Grant, Fangs and Brimstone, issue 1 through 3 is coming to
Mm-hmm.
Kickstarter. As we're recording this, you are not live. When do you see the book going live for Kickstarter?
The book will be live on Kickstarter on the 16th of September. It is in pre-launch now, so if you go to if you go to bixbygrant.com, BIXBYGRANT.com, that will reroute you to the Kickstarter. And when will this go live?
Wednesday.
Okay, so yeah, people can go there and they can hit notify and launch. You can there's some artwork there. There's a little bit of a description, so you can get a flavor for it if you're new to it, and get the notify launch. That doesn't mean you have to buy it. If you're not familiar with Kickstarter, all you're saying is that you're going to get an email that lets you know when it goes live. There are a couple of early bird specials that we do on the first and second day, so that if you if you want to take advantage of that and get some free stuff, we're going to have a Bixby Grant enamel pin this time around. In the past, we've done free posters. This time, we're going to do an enamel pin that if you buy the main book, it comes free with it. But that's only for the first day. So if you want to take advantage of that, getting notified of launch is really helpful. We also do have a discount if you're a completist and want to get all 3 covers. We have the main cover by Gonzalo, and then we have 2 variant covers. One by Craig Russo, who's currently working on the Herculoids and has worked on Young Hellboy before, and another one by a guy named Daniel Caval, who's a South American, kind of a bit of a known, but he's great. He's got this really cartoony, fluid style that I absolutely love, and he's got Bix fighting a werewolf on his variant. So if you want to get all those together for $20 off, sign up for the notification.
Yeah, and if you read my Substack, everybody, you know what the notification does because I just did a write up about it. But aside from that, you did a great job of kind of answering my next question. But I know in past Kickstarters you've done, like, I love your stickers are awesome.
Oh, thanks.
How they fit in world and everything. What kind of other goodies can backers expect for their pledge?
So let's see. Got to run through. I'm running through the Kickstarter in my head. So we've got. I mentioned we're not going to have a poster this time around because I've done posters for the last 3 and I wanted to mix it up. You can, however, just while I'm thinking of it, stream of consciousness, you can pick up if you're new. You can pick up. We have a Gabriel Hardman cover, which is right here. I don't know if familiar with Gabe's work. He is. He did a bunch of work for DC. He also is the storyboard artist for the last Indiana Jones movies and also all the Christopher Nolan Batman movies, among other things. And he's just a phenomenal artist. He also works on the Planet of the Apes books. And he's doing, I think, a new book for DC. Anyways, there's a poster, a 20 by 30 version of his poster, which I love. It's got Diego in the background here. And you can still pick that up. We also have a poster version of the Raphael Albuquerque cover that was for the Wolf She Cried book. But for rewards for 1 through 3, you can get, like I mentioned, if you miss the early bird free pin, you can still pick that up. That's a new item this time around. You can get the variant covers, which I mentioned. You can also get, we have one tier that is all the books and all the covers. So it's going to be 12 comics in total for one low fee. I do give a discount if you buy in bulk like that. And then for the first time, actually, and I'm pretty excited about this, is we're going to have sketches, some pencil sketches and also some inked sketches, full body Bix poses by Gonzalo Martinez, the interior artist. But those are a limited supply. So those are first come, first serve. And I think those are probably going to go pretty fast. That's the thing that I'm most excited about this time around. But yeah, we now have a bunch of back issues. And also, like you mentioned, we do have a new sticker. We're going to have 4 new prints this time around as stretch goals. Yeah, I think that about covers it. I keep my Kickstarters pretty straightforward. It's like books and just a couple of little tchotchkes. So I like to make it easy for people to get into it and pick up the books and enjoy the comics as opposed to all the other stuff that could go with it.
Yeah, I feel like the more straightforward, the better.
Yeah.
So you did say that people will be able to get the first 2 issues of this series.
Yep.
Will they also be able to get the OGN that you did a while
Absolutely.
back?
Yep. Yep. That's a good call. There's a catch up tier in which you can get the Wolf She Cried 72 pager plus the first and second issue of Fangs and Brimstone along with the third one. So it would be 4 issues there.
Awesome, because I got to pick up the Wolf She Cried. That's the only reason I ask.
I'll send you one.
And I mean, yeah, it sounds like it's going to be a great campaign. I mean, the day one, everybody is really important. Hitting that notification is huge because it helps
Yep.
with the algorithm stuff.
Yep.
I mean, anything else you got to say about the book before we kind of sign off? Sounds like you got a great project. I mean, obviously, I'm a fan of the project. It sounds like issue 3 is going to be great. I love seeing what you have coming in the future.
Well, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate your support. I do think, we've got issue 3 coming out. Issue 4 is already drawn. So that one will be coming out probably in late winter, early spring is what I'm shooting for. Things are about to get big. Like, it's been kind of a small case so far of investigating a murder, and the scale is about to ratchet up. So now's a good time to get on board before we ramp up into the finale.
Definitely. And you mentioned social media before, but where's the best place to send people outside of the Kickstarter to follow your work?
You can go to, you can catch me on Blue Sky. And I'm also on Facebook. What's the best one? Oh, you can also go to RNM Press. That's RNM stands for Robots, Ninjas, and Monkeys. RNMpress.com is kind of my home base. So that links off to some other stuff there.
Definitely. So everybody make sure to go follow Patrick everywhere. Check out the Kickstarter, which I will have a link in the show notes down below, so you can click that and hop right to it. Hit that notification button, because definitely you don't want to miss this project. Patrick, it's been a pleasure. It's so great to finally meet you and talk to you about this book.
You too.
And I just best of luck with the campaign, man.
Thanks, man. This has been a pleasure. It's a joy to talk to you. I appreciate the support.